Welcome to Sex Empowerment with Helen and Halima. This is going to be an amazing, amazing podcast because it's a very important podcast on male sexuality. We're going to be cracking the myths of male sexuality. So, this is for both men and women. It's going to be information packed, and you're going to hear some things you may have never heard before. And before we dive into this big topic, right, like cracking the myth of male sexuality, Helen, we have to let everyone know that you are a psychosexual therapist and relationship therapist. So we're not coming here with opinions. We're coming here with some science and some experience. I want to let people know that as well, Helen.
Thank you very much, Halima, for introduction. Yes,
I don't want
indeed.
I don't want men saying, "What does she know about male sexuality?" So, so I want to get that out in the open. And this is a very important topic because it impacts so much of our lives, especially the women who love men and with the men that we love. Um, and I know with you working as a sexual psychotherapist, you shared some of your stories to me offline about about clients, just men in general, how they experience some of these myths that we're going to be talking about today. So, kind of give me your opinion as to what's the current theme of male sexuality, how it's perceived, I should say.
Well, male sexuality is actually not as well presented, I would say, and explored as female sexuality, paradoxically, because historically men are supposed not to have any problems, so it's kind of straightforward with men. And again, according to one of the existing myths, men are those who do not have sexual function problems, but the reality is actually completely different. There are a lot of men who suffer from sexual function issues, and a lot of these men suffer in silence as well, or try to resolve it using quick fix things that work for some time but then stop working.
Yeah, that suffering in silence is a big one because they don't reach out for help as often, say, that maybe women do as well, as you mentioned before. When there's some form of male dysfunction, how we know there's a health issue, but how does that bleed into the rest of their lives, so far as relationships and their career, etc.? How does it bleed into other areas of their life?
Well, it has a huge impact on males' life, on different areas of male's life, especially his ego, his self-esteem. And of course, when self-esteem and ego are affected, it affects him socially, professionally, relationship-wise. And this is basically something that, again, society doesn't talk about that much. Men don't want to talk about it because when they come to see professionals like myself, it's some kind of emergency situation when there is no way out of that. So when kind of he reached that level of desperation, I would say, that he needs someone to help him. Or there are situations when a woman would bring her partner to the therapy room, and then they start like couples therapy or convince her man that he needs to go and see professional help.
And we're going to talk about that today, how women contribute to this the societal ideas about male sexuality. So, why do you think that the male sexuality is like, shh, don't talk about it? It's just assumed that men's supposed to be. This is one of the myths that men are always potent and always ready to go.
Yes, because I think male sexuality, expression of men through sex, is kind of the way he can, he's taught, obviously, to express himself as a man, and especially to They have this pressure of performance. So kind of the only way it is believed that men are very difficult. They struggled to express their emotions. They struggle to talk about what they feel, because that's, again, historically how they are brought up and taught by their fathers, by their grandfathers, by other men. And the only way they can express themselves is sexually. The only way they can tell women what they feel about her is through sex.
Mm.
And of course, this situation exists when men brag about their performance with women to their friends, right? How they performed or how many women they had
Yeah.
through sexual activity. And that's unfortunately leads to a lot of problems in their lives and relationships.
And what can I know this is kind of maybe a little off topic, but maybe not. Why do you think this whole thing of bragging and where is that coming? I guess this is the ego needing to prove or compete with other men.
Yes, a realization himself as a man.
Mhm.
So the way of realization yourself is basically being competitive, and not just being competitive in life and business, but being competitive in sex. And I work with a lot of men who are quite successful in their, professional life. And somehow they bring that mentality to bedroom as well. They feel that they have to be competitive with their partner. They have to be competitive with all the partners she had before him. So he has to prove to her that he's the best, he's the strongest, he's the man of the men. And then somehow, what I also noticed is he is competing with her as well. Strangely enough,
Mm.
that's kind of interesting. So he's kind of like showing to her that he's stronger than her, because obviously we live in a very competitive world where women are quite competitive as well, and somehow it transferred to bedroom as well.
Wow. And this is all happening unconsciously, or this is something that we actually think about? Because the bedroom, we think about more intimacy. We think of, you know, sweetness and maybe a little bit of aggression, but, we don't, I'm not thinking about competition, competing with someone, my man, through sex. So can you go into depth about that?
Well, it's kind of happening on subconscious level and conscious level, believe it or not. Because
Mm.
what I also found interesting is that these men who come to see me for problems like unreliable erection or performance anxiety, they say that they don't have problems like this with women who, for example, they don't kind of women's who they look down at. So women's who they think she's not gonna be my partner or long-term partner. She's not smart enough. She's maybe not beautiful enough for me. So with women like this, they don't have problems sexually. But with women who they look up to, that's when problem starts. And it's actually quite common problem, believe it or not.
That's very interesting. So you mentioned some of the issues with erectile dysfunction. What are some of the other common problems that men are experiencing with their sexual function?
So erectile dysfunction, or we also call it unreliable erections, this is like the most common problem. But also men can experience problems with premature ejaculation or delayed ejaculation, or problems with sexual drive and libido, or even orgasm. But the most kind of like the most common problem is when there is like absent erection or weak erection, or when men cannot maintain erection during sexual activity, or he doesn't have erection when he wants it to happen.
Hmm. What are some of the contributing health factors that may cause these symptoms?
So obviously, when I start working with my clients, the first thing I tell them is that they have to eliminate any physical health issues that could contribute to to their problem. And normally, I would say that the first thing that they have to do is to go and see a medical doctor and take some tests. That medical doctor can tell them if they're healthy generally, if there is no drop in testosterone production, if there is no problems with heart or with blood pressure or with diabetes. The list is quite long, actually, and that's something that we discuss with my clients. But what is important for men to know is that if, for example, they had never problems with their sexual activity and with their erections, and then suddenly they started to experience problems out of nowhere, right? So that could be an underlying cause for heart attack or strokes, because it's important to understand that arteries that are located near penis, they're so tiny that they feel problems with cardiovascular system much earlier than it can be diagnosed in cardiovascular system itself. So if there is a case like this, it's important to go and check with medical doctor to make sure that it's not the case. Because men's cardiovascular system and reproductive system are very connected and interrelated as well. But one of the most contributing factor, and again, when physical factors eliminated, there is no general health problems, then we look at psychological side of the problem, because one of the biggest issues is stress, anxiety. That's the biggest killers of male sexuality.
Well, I really appreciate that you explaining the penis and heart connection interrelation. So if they're having some form of, um, like you said, I call it erectile dysfunction, something like that, that could be an indicator of a cardiovascular issue. So that's
Yeah,
very important to make that connection. And we do know that stress is worse. It's just is bad for a litany of different types of health
yeah,
concerns. But when men say they high-powered men or men who have a lot of demands on them, family, business, working, financial issues, etc. Um, how do you support them in kind of moving out of that stress state into a place where they can take necessary action, but also coming from a place of, more calm and more confident?
Well, first of all, there are a lot of things for them to understand, and especially when, yes, obviously, how to relax, how to unwind from stressful situations as well. But also those ideas, those myths that they have that kind of cause that embarrassment. And a
Yeah.
lot of these ideas and myths, they create themselves. They are not realistic. There's something that he heard maybe when he was a kid or when he was a teenager, or something that I don't know, some angry girlfriend told him, and it kind of ingrained into his mind, and that creates embarrassment. So, if, for example, sexual intercourse doesn't go the way he expects, that creates embarrassment, shame. And the emotion of shame or embarrassment, it increases anxiety. So it's very important to educate, obviously, men who have problems with sexual health on how these things work, and what these myths are and how they can affect him additionally. And of course,
Oh,
his woman he's in relationship with, that's important factor to his health as well, because it
uh,
depends a lot on that.
you make a distinction. So there's general stress, right? There's work life, etc. And then there's stress and anxiety that comes from previous experience with sex.
Yeah.
So
Prejudices, statements, kind of what he thinks of himself. Because a lot of men, they are kind of, they create these ideas. They try to read people's mind, and they create these ideas, and they believe in these ideas. So, for example, like this idea about size, one of the biggest problems that a lot of men struggle with, this myth about size.
does
Men,
size matter? That's the question
yeah,
that we
exactly.
hear often. Yeah.
This concern about size. So what I want to say to men who are concerned about this, that women, and I'm telling you as a woman myself and as a psychosexual therapist as well, you need to differentiate fantasy from reality, because what we fantasize is one thing, but what is reality and practicality of reality is different thing. So women, even if they fantasize about big sizes, it doesn't mean that they want to have big size in their life, because big size means pain, injury, and discomfort. And in order for a woman to get to orgasm, big size won't help this, because all the, like physically, all the area that is responsible for female orgasm is basically clitoris, and clitoris is quite big organ, but it's located in the beginning of entry, vaginal entry. So having big size will not resolve problem. And when women like appreciate or value men, they don't really think about size. All they think about is how pleasant that experience was. How did he make her feel? Did he treat her well? Did he treat her like a goddess? You know, did he make you feel safe? The last thing women would be thinking about is his size. And especially when women talk between each other, they never ever, that's another thing actually, when men have like problems with erection, another quite big fear that actually quite common, interestingly, they think that woman leaves that bedroom, goes and tells everybody about him in details. This is a big myth.
Yeah. I mean, it happens,
Can
but
happen, yes, but
not
one
with the
maybe in a million times, and nobody would take this seriously, because if woman like this goes and tells everybody that something wrong with the guy she's just slept with, everybody thinks something wrong with her.
right,
But she's
exactly. Yeah,
actually not giving herself any credit by doing this. She's just basically humiliating herself, not that guy.
I agree. Yes.
And that's one thing. Another thing, what I always explain to my clients is that understand that if, say, there was a problem with erection, and you kind of feel like a failure at that point, remember that this woman who's with you, she feels like a failure herself, because she thinks that you're not into her, you're not attracted by her. That's why it's her fault, not your fault.
That's a very good point, which I think ties into another myth that men are responsible for women's orgasm, and that's the stress and anxiety that goes along with sexual performance that men feel, and also
Pressure,
when men
yeah.
when men watch a lot of porn, if they're watching porn, you see the women yelling and screaming, and like in
Yeah.
real life, that may not be happening. So that's like, okay, so they're comparing it. So can you talk about like are men responsible for women's orgasm?
Well, no. Well, I would say 90% of female orgasm is her responsibility. 10%, I would say, yes, men contribute to female orgasm, of course, because female orgasm, it's a very multifaceted phenomenon. There are lots of things that, important for it to happen, including her relationships, including her being with the right guy, feeling safe, feeling beautiful, feeling, connected to him, and of course his skills as well, somehow. But the 90% of female orgasm is obviously, depend on woman, because she obviously has to, how to say it, um, it doesn't come naturally to most women. So there is like special, again, adjustment, training, understanding that will help women to experience orgasm. And it's not her man's responsibility as initial point. It's her responsibility to do that, to work on that.
So would you say that taking blame out of it, like men blaming women, men blaming themselves, women blaming themselves, if we could take the blame out of the sexual, so, what we don't like about sex or what we want more of sex, sometimes it's we don't want to study or train, but we want to blame our partner. So how important is this training and education that I know that you teach as well?
Well, you should never blame anybody, because if there is a problem in sexual activity, in sexual health with your partner, there is a problem of both of you. It's both of you are liable for this. Both of you are responsible for this. So if your partner suffers from sexual function issue, it's not just his or her problem; it's your problem as well. So every relationship have to be looked at from that point.
Well, that requires communication. That requires gentle honesty. Because I know of women in the past who would say not so nice things to their partners um, as a way of lashing out. Maybe they're frustrated. Maybe they're tired of certain types of things, and it just comes out. And I'm sure men say the same things as well. But when it comes down to a male psychology, it seems like there's a longer imprinting of, you know, that
Oh, yes.
experience on their psyche and on their confidence over the long haul than women. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. Because every time men come with unreliable erections, when we unpack it, there is always be something related to what woman said at certain point of his life. And it could be something absolutely insignificant. It could be somebody, who just maybe even didn't say anything, but kind of looked at him in a certain way, or did something, then he interpreted it as at his, account. But yes, it's very much for women and also for men, because, when you are have an argument, always watch your words, always, choose carefully what you are saying in that heat of argument, so you don't regret afterwards, because these words, they're quite powerful and they can have really long lasting traumatic effect on your partner. And yes, indeed, women can destroy men by saying really hurting words towards, especially when it's directed to his penis and to his male sexuality, because it stays in man's psyche for quite a long time, and it's quite damaging until he meets another woman who will take him out of that hole.
Yes.
And that actually happens to women as well, but with male sexuality, it's especially, it's so you know um, it's so damaging.
And they try to remedy the problem through sometimes like Viagra, or they may even, I know there's even penile implants now.
Yeah,
Um, so men are trying to, figure out how to be, quote unquote, more, or, get more girth, um, whatever they feel they're lacking, more longevity.
yeah.
But that doesn't really get to the core of the problem, does it?
No, unfortunately not, because the problem is that if man experiences sexual function issues, the first point of contact will be doctor, medical doctor. And I do not object. In fact, I encourage men to go and see medical doctor, like I said, to eliminate those physical contributing factors. But quite often, medical men go to doctor in order to resolve their sexual function issues, especially when it comes to psychology. And doctors, medical doctors, are not trained in this field. And quite often, what medical doctors do, they prescribe Viagra. And Viagra comes in all different forms under all different names: Cialis, Tadalafil. There are lots of different trademarks and names, and they're used in different countries as well under different names. The thing is that Viagra doesn't resolve problem at all. It can resolve it for a short period of time, but in a while, those men who've been taking it, they will see that Viagra stops working. And in order for Viagra to work, still your brain has to be sexually stimulated. Because some men think, oh, if I take Viagra, I'm not going to have problem at all. That's a big mistake. Or I will take a little bit of Viagra just to maintain my erections from time to time. I heard this, some men saying that. That's a big mistake. Because the main organ that is deciding what type of erection you're going to have, when you're going to have it, and what the quality of your sexual activity will be, is your brain. Remember that. Whether you take in Viagra or not, your brain has to be present. Your brain decides if it's going to work or it won't work. And that's the work with psychosexual therapist.
Very important work. And it also ties into the other myth that men are always ready, or they should always be, have a heart on. Like, I
Yeah.
guess that's what was some of the, I remember the commercials and discussions, the parodies of Viagra was like they had to go to the hospital because they couldn't get their erection down. Like, so it's like, and it's some of the beliefs that we have, this myth that you always supposed to have an erection.
Yeah, it's such a, you know, disturbing myth as well. And actually, quite often when men come for consultation, and again we start to look into the problem in more details, it turns out to be that these problems with erections happen when they were not sexually aroused, because sex happened too soon. Sex happened on the first date, or somebody they hardly knew, or while they were drunk, and erection didn't happen. And when erection didn't happen, he got scared. So next time he has fear of failure, because he's creating that vicious circle that it might not happen this time if it didn't happen that time. And that's based on this myth that men always have to have erection. This is people, this is bullshit, excuse my word, but men are not heartless, soulless animals. They're people, emotionally charged people. They have to have feelings, they have to be sexually stimulated, they have to be connected to someone in order to have that erection.
Well, that's the myth. That's. I'm glad we're talking about this because so many women and men themselves obviously believe that they can have sex, disconnected sex, like the whole pump and dump idea.
Yeah.
And going back to what you said about you said a lot of men had sexual issues um, having sex on the first night.
Yeah, but
That's very
this
interesting.
but this thing is that a man finds it, if he's offered sex, he finds it difficult to say no,
Right.
because
Mhm.
even if he's not sexually aroused, he is kind of struggling to admit to himself that he doesn't feel like having sex. Maybe he feels like getting to know that person more. Maybe he feels like uh, establishing that contact with that person. But
Or,
he's
may-
offered sex. Sorry.
or maybe he's not that attracted, and
Exactly.
sometimes
Yeah. He's
women
simply
have
not attracted, not sexually
right.
attracted. I mean, he's nice. He could be nice, polite, but deep inside, he's not sexually attracted. He's not obligated to be sexually attracted to every woman. And the same
No.
with women as well. You know, you're not sexually attracted to everybody you meet on the street. Otherwise, it would be a dangerous situation.
More overpopulations they say. So
Yeah.
I also want to kind of dig in this really quickly about this whole idea. Like, if it's offered, that's all I tell my clients, that just because you offer sex doesn't mean the guy wanted to have sex with you. He'll take it because maybe it's offered. It's like making a good meal. He may have
Yeah.
eaten already, but he smelled the food is available. Dibble and dabble in it. It doesn't mean that he was really hungry for it. So sometimes it's like, I think it goes back to that whole myth of letting people down, or you're supposed to be that, kind of guy who can knock all these women down, or quote unquote, or conquer these women. And women play a part in that, because if offered and he says no, I'm not interested tonight, how would
How
that
awful
may
it is for everybody. Oh my God.
will the world exist tomorrow if he says no, not tonight, or no, I'm not interested?
Yeah. He's entitled not to be interested. He's entitled not to be in the mood for sex. And he might had just stressful day and he just doesn't want to have sex.
Yeah, that's something that we have. I know as women we have to work on, and supporting our men, or just men in general, that like you said, they're not entitled to want to have sex or obligated to have sex. Um, but I think that when women feel um, they'll feel rejected in that sense, right? They may feel rejected if a man says, no, we're not used to hearing, no, not tonight, or no, I'm not interested. Um, that can, the whole myth of all men cheat. Okay, who are you out with? Like, who are you? If you're in a relationship and your man tells you not tonight, then your mind may go, I'm just assuming, I don't know for sure, it may go to, oh, okay, who you been messing with?
Hmm. Okay. Well, I think in that case, women have to start working on their self esteem because um, are we talking about here? Are we talking about like existing relationships? Or are we talking about someone who just met someone for like first or second date?
Existing relationships. So, like,
Existing
mhm.
relationships. Okay. Well, if it's existing relationships, and you are with this guy for some time, and suddenly you offer sex and he doesn't want to have sex, then I mean, take into account the circumstances in which kind of condition he is, like is he back from work, what type of day he had, what is going on in his life, how is his health, and like lots of other things. But sometimes he's just not in the mood, and if you start worrying about it, then maybe it's time to look at at the quality of sexual relationships, the quality of sex that is happening between you two, the quality of communication as well. Because remember one thing, if guy is in love, if guy is fully satisfied, he won't be cheating. He won't need this, because to cheat, it requires a lot of consequences afterwards. The guys who cheat, um, it's actually making a lot of efforts to this. It's only in desperate situation he would cheat, because he's not happy. His needs are not met.
And
But
we
if
definitely
he's
have to do.
sorry,
I think we have to do a podcast on this to unpack the cheating aspect. 'Cause that's
yes, yes, I think we have to do separate video on this. But
yes,
look at that fact that he's a human being and he can say no without like being with somebody. He
right,
just doesn't want to have sex.
right. Absolutely. And again, it's taking the blame out of everything as well, not blaming yourself or blaming anyone, but just being able to observe behavior, and to ask these questions, and look at introspection. This is about, being curious about why. It's not always that, but that's like the default that we go to, is the cheating part. But there could be a various issues going on, or just someone can be not in their mood, but that's so hard for some women to understand. So, what are some of the other myths we want to talk about is, that good sex require orgasm. Is that true?
Well, that's another quite damaging myth, because that's kind of myth that leads to faking orgasms,
Oh,
right? Somehow, again, men think that woman has to have orgasm every time she has sex with him, which is obviously, that it has to be some kind of balance here, because there are men who don't think about woman's pleasure, woman's orgasm, and there are men who think that woman has to have obligated, forced to have orgasm, because it
right,
will be indication how good he is, so he has to satisfy her by all means. And sometimes woman just doesn't want to have orgasm, believe it or not. She might get into sexual activity with you because she really likes you, she really loves you, she really wants you to have sex because she sees that you need it, but she might not want to have orgasm at this point.
right. She's not thinking that's like the end result that she's hunting for is connection. It's connection,
Yeah,
intimacy, that love.
because
Mhm.
sex is not about intercourse only, and sex is not about high quality sex is not about orgasm only. Obviously, if you have in it, it's fantastic, it's great, but if you don't, then you should not kind of pressurize you with that. You should not kind of look at it as it's like a punishment. There is no orgasm, okay, I'm gonna beat myself up, I'm not a good lover, I'm not
Right,
I'm not man enough, or I'm whatever.
right.
So communication is very important with your
Hmm.
partner.
Hmm. Um, what I was thinking about was like, unburdening these myths really can create a lot more intimacy in relationships. That's what I'm sensing when we can, you
Yeah.
know, get beyond that. Hmm.
I wanted actually to recommend this book. It's called The New Male Sexuality by Bernie Zilbergeld. It's a very old book. It was written in the previous century, but I'll tell you what, nothing has changed since then when it comes to male sexuality. And I think this book has to be read by all the men as a Bible, because it
Mm.
uncracks so many things that a man brought up with that obviously damage their self-esteem, damage their ego, damage their relationships, and so on. It would make a lot of men's life easier if they knew these things.
Hmm. And you said not much
And
has changed since it was written. That
no,
says
not
a
at
lot.
all. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, so going into the next myth, and I think this is a big one, is that real men, quote unquote, real men, I don't like that term at all, but they don't have sexual health problems. Like
Yeah,
they're,
I think we're a
yeah,
little bit touched on that, but yes, that's when men struggle to acknowledge or admit if they have sexual function problems, they don't want to deal with them. To go and see sexual therapist about their problem, it's a big step for many men. Sometimes I get clients who, like, they don't want to be seen, so they just
Mhm.
kind of hide behind um, screen. They just don't want to be seen how embarrassed they are,
Yes,
because they think if they develop sexual function problem, it's the end of their manhood.
right.
And
Hmm.
this is wrong, because it's your health. And sometimes your sexual function issue is based on some thing that you just need to acknowledge. You just need to talk through it, and it will be gone.
Well, how important, again, going back to the outside influences, societal influences, we can look at, again, I mentioned pornography earlier, but just um, the whole entertainment industry in Hollywood, so far as sex, how it's shown on television, and you know, with the the spontaneous, wild, crazy sex, it has to be that way for it to be good, or again, comparing the screens and and all of
Yeah.
the gymnastics and comparing yourself to that. Um, how much is that it's influencing a lot of not just men, but influencing our expectations in our
Oh,
sexual life.
a lot. In fact, I always thought, well, we have so much access to different type of information, and it's so difficult these days to kind of to fool people with information, because everything is out there. But it's still a big problem, because people compare themselves to these porn movies that they watch. Actually, I wanted to say porn is the worst educational material you can possibly find, because porn is specifically created for entertainment. Never learn sexual skills from porn. It's the same as you would compare yourself to James Bond, a fantasy figure, and then get upset because you can't fight, I don't know, 100 guys and then have sex after flying skyscrapers with 10 women. It's it's impossible. But this is what porn is about. Porn is about entertainment. It has nothing to do with real sexual health, with sexuality, with pleasure, with anything.
I love that. That was it landed for me, the James Bond thing, because yeah, you don't expect to go out here and just solve the world's problems, just because you saw it on television. So
Yeah,
making the distinction
exactly.
between fantasy and like your real tangible world, yeah, very, very important. So what is your
Differentiate. Yes,
Mhm.
fantasy is very important. Fantasy is also important for sex life, but fantasy plays completely different role. So differentiate fantasy from reality. Reality is one thing, fantasy is another thing. And quite often what we want to have in reality, we don't want that from fantasy. We want it to stay in fantasy world.
Mhm.
Don't mix these two things.
Don't mix them, and kind of manage your expectations accordingly.
Yeah.
Because people are getting paid to do that and put on a show. So also, I want to just ask. I know we're coming up against our time, but I want to ask you, because you mentioned this term several times throughout this our time today, Helen. You mentioned high quality sex. Now that may be subjective, but what do you mean when you say high quality sex?
Well, there are kind of Yes, it's very subjective. For everybody, high quality sex would mean something different. But high quality sex is when you enjoy it, when you enjoy it in your own way, when you are able to connect with your partner or your partners, when you're able to relax, to recharge, to achieve pleasure from that. That's high quality sex. When you are able to establish that intimacy, that connection. When you are stressed, when you are traumatized, when you have depression or anxiety or have really, negative kind of thoughts or feelings or physical kind of, that's not what sex should be about.
And so that's the health and sex connection. You want to have a healthy body, mind, and spirit. And I love it. So, are there any myths that we didn't cover? We may have to do a part 2 on this one. And also, I'd love for the men who may want to send questions. For when we do a live show, we'll love to answer your questions. You'll have Helen to answer your male sexual health questions. So I know a lot of men want information, but they may not be willing to. They may, feel like they don't want to come on and talk about it live, but you can definitely email your questions.
Yep.
I'm gonna put the email here too. Mm-hmm.
You can always email me. You can find me on this website. You can email me and even arrange 15-minute free non-obligatory consultation. Everything is strictly confidential. And ask questions and express your concerns, and you'll see that it will be worth it, because suffering in silence won't get you anywhere. It's your life, it's your health, it's your relationships. So think about it.
And if you want to send a specific question that you want us to talk about on the show, just email me, halimathehandler@gmail.com. And we will definitely want to address your questions or concerns. So, Helen, this has been an amazing information-packed session or podcast. This has been amazing because I know this is going to support a lot of women and men. Are there any last words you want to share with either the women and the men about how to maybe make their first step, their small step, or a shift in their thinking?
Well, first of all, quite important to understand that there are lots of natural ways that you can support your male health and female health as well, but here we're talking about male health. So first of all, yes, your physical general health, your what you eat, because the interesting thing, and that's something that I provide my clients with, there is a specific food that can naturally increase your level of testosterone, and there is a food that can decrease your level of testosterone. For example, like grapefruit. I don't know how many men know that grapefruit can decrease your level of testosterone, or drinking beer with hops, because hops is something that decreases male testosterone and pumps men with female hormones. So things like this are important to acknowledge, because it all has contribution to your male health. Another thing is fitness, and specifically pelvic floor fitness for men. Another thing that is not very widely known, however, there are programs popping up these days that try to kind of promote the fact that men also have pelvic floor as women do. And it's essential in male's health. So there is a program that I teach to men. It's called Erection Fitness, and that program specifically designed to help men to improve their sexual health and to maintain their sexual health, and it's regardless of their age, because it's traditionally believed that men at the age of, say, 50, 60 start to experience sexual function problems just because of age. This is not true, because if you look after yourself, if you do the right exercises, these problems will go away. And I have it in my practice when men 60 plus who were prescribed Viagra, who had no hope for having like a normal sexual activity without any medication, actually got off that medication and enjoying their sex without any assistance. I even heard this feeling like in their 20s. So it's all very important, this kind of information. And of course, communication with your partner. Your partner plays quite important role in your sexual health. And if relationships are not good, if they're toxic, if there is lots of argument going on, so try to resolve that. But if it's not possible, get out of those relationships, because they are only damaging your male health and your longevity. Remember that your male sexual health and your longevity are very connected.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Helen. What an amazing show. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week. Again, you have the website here is londonpsychosexualtherapy.co.uk to reach Helen. And you can get a 15-minute no cost consultation. And also for any questions that you may have for me, any topics you want to talk about or have any questions about your male sexual health, you can email me at halima@gmail.com. And we will see you guys next week. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.